Hello and welcome to part 3 of my earthy green water painting that I've been working on. I finally got some more time to work on this painting this month, thank goodness, because I had to stop in March and halt everything, but I've gotten much further into it. I'm pretty much done with all the color blocking, so this is going to be a part 3 and 4, and we're probably also going to have a part 5 later on, maybe next month. But this is probably going to be my longest demo series for a painting. I don't think I've really highlighted in great detail my other water pieces. It was just kind of glazed over the basics, but I wanted to highlight this one as much as I can, so I'll do my best to explain everything and show you as much of the process as I can. So this is part 3. So I started this off with poking through my paint globs because they've been dried for a while, but you can squish through them and there's still usable paint underneath, and I don't want to waste all of it, so there's me doing that. And I pretty much had to do that for every one of the colors. Some of them had less paint to work with than others, but it worked, so that's me doing that. And I'm also working with a medium Gamsol and Galkid, 50-50 ratio. Some of the paint did thicken up on the inside of the globs there, but that's okay. The medium helped make it more manageable. So now I'm starting to work on the neck. I took one of the skin colors with a slightly peachier tone to put into the chest and neck area, which is under the water. It has water sort of coming over it. So pretty soon here she's gonna stop looking decapitated. Hooray, because that was bothering me and freaking me out. So yeah, I'm just kind of placing this color in various parts that I see it, and this color is the color of the skin with the water over it. So it is a transparent a color that's supposed to represent the transparency of the water. You're not so much painting the water itself, you're just painting all the colors that are being reflected off of the subject that's under the water, and it sort of gives the illusion of there being water. So yeah, I'm just using that color to fill everything in. So now I'm trying to poke through some of this blue here. There's a little bit less paint, but I seem to have opened that up a bit, and I have that slightly lavender skin color still on my brush, and I'm just adding that in. There is some variation there, some blues and greens and lighter peachy tones, and then some brighter water ripple highlights that are kind of concentrated on different parts of the skin. So that's what I'm doing, and then I'm going back to a peachy color. Okay, yeah, part 3 is basically me squishing through paint globs. But hey, this is the reality of what happens when my palette dries. Thankfully, oil paint lasts a while, so even though the surface of the paint might be dry, the inside might still be usable, so fun fact. It is kind of annoying though, because sometimes the dried bits of paint get off and get onto your brush and onto the painting, so that's not very convenient, but it's okay. So then I picked up some of the warmer skin color that can be found in the face, and I'm just also bringing that in as well, because it's not only just purple, there are some of the lighter peachy pink skin tones in here as well. I would say the slight lavender tone is the more dominant color, but yeah. And then the lighter, the lightest, or the second lightest peachy skin color is also going in to emphasize some of the water ripple highlights, which is basically just the light being concentrated through the water ripples and projected onto the skin. And then I'm filling in the area around the neck here. It was a little bit confusing. I also had to blend in and sort of reshape the shadow that's underneath the neck, because it seemed like the water was a bit off to me, so I did kind of go back and forth there between blending different things, but now going back to that light lavender color. Since they're colors that I mixed, it's hard for me to kind of explain what they are, but just gonna say like that color, that peachy color. So yeah, just filling in more spots. She's slowly but surely starting to look not decapitated, but we still have a long way to go. So I picked up that lighter color again, and I'm just putting that in more highlights from the water ripples. And then towards the top there, there's like a little brown spot that is right above the neck that still has to be filled in, but that one's got a little bit more darker blues and purple greens, and so I just left that open, but I will fill that in as well. And I'm just trying to create this point on the neck, like I think I was just blending it all together, but it's a very, very soft transition color where the water meets the neck, and it's just so subtle. There's just ever so slightly like a little bit of a shadow where it does. And here's me squishing through my paint again to get to the lightest skin color. Yeah, this is just great. But hey, you guys get to see like a realistic view of what I suffer through sometimes. So now picking up that lightest skin color, I'm just once again working on some of those ripple concentrated light bits that the ripples are creating on the skin. And I mixed it in with the slightly darker color. And then also the colors that I have on top of the palette, which you can't see, they're kind of cut off the screen. I just put in a cadmium lemon, but I do have those colors up there. I just showed you. I didn't even know I was gonna do that right now. So good timing. I'm narrating as I watch this as well, but yeah, I brought in some cadmium lemon into that color. And then, can't see, show me the palette. Okay, I couldn't tell. But there is some titanium white there as well, so I was gradually bringing in titanium white to lighten some of those colors, and the cadmium lemon to help make it look more realistic, because highlights are never ever just pure white, so that's why I brought that cadmium lemon in there. And of course, because the original color blocking that I did again wasn't perfect, so I'm bringing in like a tad bit of cadmium red light to that color as well, and I'm still building up the colors on the neck, because even though I covered that layer, or I color blocked that layer, it's not perfect, so I was just kind of going back and touching things up to help make that transition between the neck look more natural. And I'm working on the chin right now. You can't see because it's cut off. Good job, Lena. Good job. But that's the thing, is like I'll aim my camera at something and I have in mind like, okay, I'm gonna work on this part. I'm gonna work on this neck here, and then I see colors that I want to also add to some part of the painting, and I forget that the camera isn't pointing there. So I do apologize. So I brought in a tiny bit of like a slightly bluish color into the ear. And then going back to the neck, I'm pretty much just all over the place. That's literally how I paint. So then going into the lighter pink, peachy skin color, just blending those together. And there still is a very, it's not distinct to the point where the water meets the skin. It's not a very distinct point, but we will get there. Just trying to get this brown surface covered and also not make her look decapitated, because nobody wants a painting of a decapitated chick. Like, that's not cute and not very decorative. I mean, I'm sure there's people out there who would like that, but that person isn't me. So moving onward, yeah, just again arranging all the ripples on the neck and the chest area, and you can see in the reference where I'm mixing the colors, just sort of what those look like. But and then going into one of the darker colors, one of the darker, like navy blue, I guess is what it looks like. So I brought that color into the peachy skin color, just ever so slightly tinted it a little. It's not perfectly correct, it seems, so I'm taking some burnt sienna and I'm adding it to that color as well, just to make it a little bit more brown. and just again filling in those spots, because towards the other side it does get a bit darker. So you can see now the water is starting to look slightly more like it's actually ending at the neck. Just that slight bit of color there made a difference to me, at least. And it's all a building, gradual process. So I will be detailing and building on those highlights and shadows and subtleties. And I had to refill my cadmium red light. But yeah, it's just a very gradual process. So I brought in a tiny bit of cadmium red light into that color there. And some burnt sienna, it seems. At least the color it made look like burnt sienna. And I guess I'm going back under the ear now. That color was a bit too light, so we had to darken it up a bit, make it a little bit more intense. So there's definitely more burnt sienna there. And I'm just kind of creating that shadow under the ear and the jawline, and also bringing it to some parts of the neck. Again, this is kind of just like a guesstimate. Also in the ear, wherever I see the color that I'm currently using, if I see that color somewhere in the ear or somewhere under the jaw or the neck or the chest, like, I'm gonna put it there. So I don't always just focus on one small area. I'll have a color and then put it wherever I see it in different spots. So we gotta rip open that brown looking paint glob, and I'm gonna create some of the deeper shadows in the ear. Again, the ear is just a guesstimate. It's not 100%, not quite what it needs to be. And then I'm just blending that color out. Didn't look like it made a big difference, but so then going to that highlight color, once again just repainting some of those ripple light beams. None of it is perfect. I just went back and kind of erased it, like blended it outwards. But that's pretty much what I do. I just kind of figure it out as I go along. I try different colors and then they might not work, so I try different ones. Like just now I picked up that very light blue color and it was way too light, and that section has more shadows in it, so I went to the darker color and then mixed it with some of the same color that I used for the shadow under the jaw and the ear, and that ended up being much closer to what I needed. So very often I'll place the color down and then it's too late, and then I go back on my palette and redo it and try to make it more accurate. So going back to this blue color. See, these colors, those blues were actually made for the water ripples, but I found a use for them in the skin tones. So I'm actually going to end up having to remix them, but yeah. So I brought in some of the earthy greens as well. Mind you, I mixed a very small amount of greens. For how much green there is in this painting, I should have mixed way more greens, but I didn't. So now we have this very light bluish greenish color that is this part where the water meets the neck and like the ear and the jaw, like that whole part, there's just a very slight blue there in that transition, and then it fades to green. If I just painted this brown or green line there, it wouldn't look real. You have to kind of create the illusion of the water, the figure disappearing into the water, and the further away a certain body part from the water is, the darker that color of the water is going to be. And in this case, since it's right at the neck, right where the water meets the neck, it's just slightly blue looking. So we're bringing some browns in here now. and then just kind of adding it to that color. This painting has much more muted tones, I suppose. A lot of my water paintings are super colorful, but this one's just very heavily green. So I'm picking up some of that dark brown, like a grayish brown, and just adding it there. Sort of blending it with the blue, but keeping that ever so slightly blue line there. It's very subtle, and you'll see it being blended with the browns. And this is the reflection of the face. It's a very faint reflection, not like a full mirror effect. It's just a very faded dark reflection, and it looks super warped, which I'm kind of insecure about with this painting right now. But I'm hoping that I'll be able to just kind of let go of that and settle with the warped, strained reflection, because that's just, it looks that way in the reference, you know. Sometimes you get a wonky reference, or it makes sense in the reference, but it's so much harder, despite how simple the shapes are, it's so much harder to make it make sense. So I brought in some more browns and the lighter colors, and I'm just blending that reflection there, trying to make that subtle transition. We're now moving into the water, so going back to that grayish, bluish light color. And I'm just trying to create some of the shapes here in the water and the reflections, which are reflecting, you know, both the sky and the skin and the face, the everything, basically. As well as the trees that are behind her. Those are sort of mixed in with this reflection here. So then going back to that lavender-ish skin color and bringing that in. There's like a slight faded blob of this color where part of the shoulder is slightly closer to the surface of the water than the rest of the body. And just the way the water flows, it kind of, it's hard to explain, but I'm trying. So then going back to highlights again and working up more of those highlight colors on the part of the body that's... So, okay, let's see if I can explain this. So there's two parts of the body that's underwater. One is just being covered by a very, very light wave, and then there's almost like another wave meeting it and interacting with it. It's so strange, but I'm painting like two levels of water, if that makes sense. They're just kind of colliding. It's like the chest is not fully 100% submerged. It's just a very, very light layer, but then there's the waves surrounding it. Yeah, this is one of the more complex water paintings that I have to explain. Despite it being more simple, you know, there's not as many water ripples, not as much color variety, and the reflections are a lot more simple versus the other recent water paintings where there's just so much ripple, so many colors being reflected. This one is so much more simple in that sense, but at the same time it's so much more complex for me to try and explain. So thank you guys for bearing with me. I really hope I'm making sense. So then I went back to that green color and the dark blue color, and then I brought in this much darker what appears to be like a dark gray or a black or perhaps even a green. So now I'm going back to the neck and the chest. There's some ripples on that side from the other shoulder that are a little bit hidden, but there's a part that's peeking through, and of course it's underwater as well. So I'm just creating that small little ripple there, which looks terrible. It does have to blend with the dark greens much more, but there is sort of like a grayed out turquoise in that area, which is the colors I just laid down. I think the dark green just makes it look more contrasted. So I added some blue there. Going back to squishing through the paint tube. And then bringing that color in there as well. Sort of blending it almost with some of the colors I already have, and also bringing it into those colors too. So then I'm poking through yet another color. The light's reflected off the palette, so it's kind of hard to see what that is. But we'll see what color it makes. So it seems to be one of the dark greens of the water, which again I had to remix because I did not mix enough of it. And yeah, just desperately trying to salvage what I can. And then I'm just blending it with the lighter blue turquoise color, which is whatever slight evidence of a shoulder we have peeking through on that side. There's so many little subtleties that make a piece look realistic. Like, I could leave that part out, right? But, you know, something tells me there's gonna be something missing there. And all these little subtleties just make a piece look more real. So now I'm just sort of, I have this concoction of colors, which eventually every palette becomes, but now I'm just bringing the grayish, purplish, bluish color into the skin parts where the water is over it, and just trying to create some more of those transitions and bringing in more colors that I see, because these colors have so many or the parts of the water and the skin under have so many colors in them that you just can't get all at once on the first try. At least I can't. I'm not that cool. It takes me a long time. And the longer I paint, the longer I take on my paintings. So now I'm creating almost the same color again as that line we drew on the neck, the very faint blue line, because this is where the water meets the skin. You might notice this in many of my other water paintings. Wherever the water meets the skin, there's always like a certain color line. Very often it's blue or it's purple. When I painted saturated water pieces in 2013, part of the reason they were so saturated was because it was so much easier for me to be able to see these different subtleties in the colors of the water. So bringing up the saturation of my reference made them much more obvious to me. And I mean, obviously I was really into the bright saturated color palette as well, but it was also a lot harder to see the different color variations in these like shadow gradients without bringing the saturation up. I don't think my eyes were as trained as they are now, which is, you know, 5 years later, and my colors have gotten so much more muted, and my references have gotten so much more muted. I'm not as saturated as I used to be. And yeah, part of the reason is also skill-wise. I feel like I've improved in being able to see color and training my eyes to see it, so I don't have to raise the saturation up on my paintings that much. I could just see the colors better. So, you know, without narrating too much, it's kind of obvious what I'm doing here. I'm just creating more of the water and the skin under the water. I brought in that, there's like a slight bit of sap green in that very, very light blue color. So we're going back to that color now. And also I am gradually mixing my brush in the medium, just dipping it in there.